Hey guys, what's going on? Jeff EK, Clinic Girl Secrets. Wanted to spend just a short show today with you, sharing a little bit of my personal story that I don't talk a lot about. I don't have one of those stories that, comes from a crazy rock bottom or loads and loads of debt. But there has been some different challenges along the way, and I think it's important to share those lessons and those journeys. And so I'm going to try to keep this really short, about 10 minutes or so. And so for those that, don't know me, I was born in Wisconsin. I'm an only child. The two parents, both of my parents are business people. They owned a printing business in Wisconsin for over 35 years. They actually just sold it in 2022. So they're kind of enjoying their retirement years. And so when I was a young kid, I always remember listening to them, even when I was like in my crib as a little kid, listening to my parents late at night talking about business. And so I always knew that I would be somehow into business. I just didn't know when or how that would occur. And so fast forward to high school, again, I was still into business, but not really like not a lot of direction in high school. I wasn't a great student. I wasn't bad, but I wasn't great. I went to college and I went to school for engineering. And when I went to school for engineering, my mother, because I was the only child, she's like, "Hey, like, we've saved a lot of money. We're going to help you pay for some of your school. Like, go there and make sure you do a good job." And so again, I don't have one of those entrepreneur stories where I'm like, "Hey, school failed me." School failed me. I wasn't for school. The curriculum wasn't it. I was actually almost a straight A student all through engineering school. And I think that my lessons in engineering school are not necessarily the skills. I think that I certainly acquired some skills in math, but I think that the skills come secondary to the character traits developed in engineering school. I think what it teaches you is discipline. What it teaches you is to push through things that you don't want to push through in terms of different classes, different subject matter that you're not necessarily interested in learning, but you have to learn anyway. So it's really more of a character thing. And being willing to solve the problem at hand. And that was my biggest takeaway from engineering school, is not so much again the skills, but the character traits and how to operate in life to be successful. In the engineering school, I was fortunate to take a physics class. And in that class, I ended up meeting a gentleman who would later become my business partner. His name is Nick. And Nick, at the time when I met him, he was going to school for mechanical engineering. I was going to school for systems industrial engineering. And when him and I got to talking, he said to me, he says, what is this industrial engineering and systems engineering? I'm like, well, it's kind of like business engineering. I had chosen my major by going to my counselor and saying, what's the most social engineering? I can't sit behind a computer and design stuff all day, such as a mechanical or maybe even a civil engineer. So what can I do that's social? And she said, if you do industrial engineering, you'll be able to work on manufacturing lines and work with operators and such. And I said, sold. I'm in. That sounds great. So I told Nick that I was doing that. And what's interesting is that he was not overly sold on mechanical engineering. And so then after our conversation, he actually went and changed his major from mechanical engineering to industrial engineering. And that's ultimately, looking back, as Steve Jobs always says, the dots always connect backwards. That was ultimately the start of my business journey, was that conversation with him and him changing his major. And so when Nick changed his major, we started having a lot of classes together and we became really good friends. And in 2016, we started our first business. Okay, our first business was selling clothes online. We created a brand and we were going to make it this huge, proprietary, big, exclusive brand. And like any new business, it was a big fail. We made about zero cash. I think we lost maybe 5 or 6 thousand bucks on the venture, which is a lot of money at the time. I didn't have $5 or $6 thousand to lose, and so that was kind of a big thing. But there was a lot of lessons, and it was a lot of fun. We got to develop a brand together. We worked alongside some of our close friends who had skills in design work and that such thing. And it was a lot. It was a big fail on paper, but it was a lot of lessons and a lot of value in terms of getting us started. So at that time in 2016, 2017, we were still in school. So that was our first business venture while still in school. And then if we fast forward, we graduated. I worked at a job for about 18 months, just doing account management, working with clients, developing my client relationship skills. And then fast forward to 2019, we both decided to quit our jobs. And we said, hey, we're going to give this another run with a more intentional business than selling clothes. As at the end of the day, Nick and I were just not really into clothes enough to sell them. Okay. And so what we did is we started an agency. And the agency was certainly not like what it is today. When we first started, we did a lot of work for free for pretty much the whole year of 2019. Okay. And then what we did is we figured out that when we were doing free work, we were shooting videos. We would go shoot videos and then we would like kind of set up these social media posts and such. But what we realized is that we weren't necessarily great at the video and creative side, but we were really, really good at running ads. We were good at ads because that it aligned with engineering school. And it aligned with our ability and skill sets in terms of mathematics and statistical analysis and all that kind of stuff. And so when we were running the agency, after we got out of the free work phase, we started running ads for gym owners, and we were moderately successful. We had a handful of clients paying us maybe $500 to $1,000 a month, 500 to $1,000 a month, nothing crazy. And then the biggest pivotal moment was when we were impacted by chiropractic. So for me, I'd had terrible back pain for a lot of years. I'm about 26 years of age at this time. And I had bad back pain on and off for years in my early 20s, which I knew wasn't correct and I knew was wrong. And I think early 2020 or late 19, I had a big impact. I can't remember which year it was, but I was impacted by a chiropractor. And it's really just like, I don't have one of those stories where like, it got me back on my feet and I could barely walk. But what it really did was show me that there was an alternative to, just popping pills and, masking the solution. Okay. And so in 2020, we actually pivoted our whole business to be only for chiropractors and only serving chiropractors in terms of helping them grow their practice, which was actually really impactful because it allowed us to be super hyper focused on one avatar, one target market, serving them with one niche, which was Facebook ads. And what we found from that is that we could actually scale the business pretty quickly because if we could figure out how to get results for one clinic, we could multiply those results and duplicate those results in another clinic. And so that's why they say in the beginning of a business, the riches are in the niches because you can actually scale it not only for the fact that it keeps the business simple, but you start to really truly understand the problems of the people you're serving, and then you can help provide different solutions to them at different levels. And so we were able to start that business in my business partner in his sunroom. So he had an apartment, him and his girlfriend lived, his fiance now, but girlfriend at the time. We worked in his apartment when we started this agency. And so for the first few months, we made no money. $500 a month, $1,000 a month, take home, like not collection. We took home that money. So for collections, we were probably doing $2,000 a month, right? So we were getting by, but it wasn't great. You know what I mean? Like we were making less money than we were at our jobs before we had quit. And so the first thing we had to do was supplement that income. And so here's what was interesting is that we were able to, in that 10 by 10 sunroom, that sunroom that was attached to his apartment, we were able to build the business to $80,000 a month out of that sunroom, 10 by 10 feet. And what was crazy is that that business doing $80,000 a month was myself, Nick, and then we had one other teammate that we later brought on when we had enough cash saved. And so we were able to do $80,000 a month with almost a 50% profit margin. So we went from dead broke to having $40,000, $50,000 a month in surplus in a matter of probably about 3 to 4 months. And that is one of those things where it's like if you think about like the exponential growth, those that first 18 months didn't seem like a lot was occurring. But then in that last 2 to 3 months, like everything took off and people would say, oh my gosh, you blew it up in 3 months. But really it was the result of 18 months of trial and error. And then eventually everything clicked and then it just blew up. Right. And so we were stacking cash. And then we hired our first employee once we had about $80,000 in liquidity, non-tax liquidity. We hired our first teammate. Okay, so some lessons there. Number one is keep your overhead low in the beginning. Okay, a lot of business owners, especially clinicians, get destroyed by their overhead. Okay, they take on all this unnecessary overhead. I mean, I've worked with people that are doing $50,000 a month and their overhead is 42, right? So no matter what, they have to at least make $42,000 just to make their nut every single month. So keep the overhead low in the beginning. You don't need to be fancy. Just keep it low, keep your rent low, work out of a small space, try to keep as much of the cash as you possibly can so that you can provide that safety net in terms of liquidity. And what that'll allow you to do then is it'll allow you to think a little bit longer term rather than just short term on, where's my next dollar going to come from? Okay. The second lesson there is that you don't want to hire too soon. Okay. That's kind of back to the operational thing. We wanted to save I think we had about $50,000 to $60,000 in cash, if I remember right, before we hired our first teammate. So again, like this is like post-tax money, not money that's going to be taxed. So we knew that if we brought somebody on, if we had a couple bad months, we would still have the cash to be able to support that person. Because when you bring on employees, you also bring on the risk. You take on their families, you take on their loved ones, you take on their life. And so you have to have a safety net to where if the business goes sour for a few months, you can still make sure that their family and themselves is taken care of. That's your responsibility as the business owner. So you don't want to hire too soon without having enough liquidity because you might get yourself in kind of a jam and you may have to let that person go, which ultimately could put them in a hardship. And that's not what leadership is. You need to avoid those situations at all costs. Okay. And so in that sunroom, we were able to get to just, I think it was just shy of about 100 grand a month before we moved into our office space. Today, we do about 2 million a year. We've got a full built out team that serves all of our clients, runs all the client ads. We're expanding. We're in a very heavy growth season. So for context, like we at the first 2 years of the business, 2.5 years of the business, we were running at like a 40 to 50% profit margin. This year, we're probably going to run it closer to about a 7 to 10% margin because this year is a full investment year. And so as you start to scale the practice, what you're going to find is that not every year is going to be super high profit, right? You need to have those every other year curvatures to where 1 year is a heavily investment year where you're taking a lot of the profit and reinvesting in the business. That's us this year. And then the other year will be very profitable where you won't invest as much, but it'll be more kind of sustaining the growth that you brought into the company over the last 12 months. Okay. And so like I think that that's the kind of the lesson for me always is that it takes a level of character to, collect almost $2 million a year and not really keep any of that money. And that's a lot different than it was in the beginning, right? And that's what it takes to scale, though. I mean, if you look at the ventures of a lot of the most successful entrepreneurs on the planet, they have been extremely risky at different times in their careers. Okay. And so that's really the story of where we're at today. Okay. So, right currently, we are serving chiropractic neuropathy and decompression. We're coaching with different mentors on how to expand those opportunities. We're looking for ways to bring in other talent, other people, whether that's remote or in person. But we're really just in that growth year. We're having a lot of fun. We're serving clients. We are in the chiropractic and the medical provider success business. And for us, it's really just it's the game of business, right? It's the game of having fun, making a good living, and really just delivering honest and really data-driven value to our clients. And so that's where we're at today. I'm looking forward to continue sharing the story with you guys. That's kind of how we got to where we are today. Again, not some sort of sob story by any means, but definitely hardships along the way, risks along the way. And I think that everyone has their own story, okay? Just because you're an entrepreneur doesn't mean school had to fail you or that you had to hit rock bottom or something like that. I think everybody goes through that stuff. But I think if you're smart and you play your cards correctly, you can do it with a very calculated risk, such as we've done. So hope that's been helpful, guys. We just wanted to share a little story with you. We'll see you guys in the next episode. Until then, peace and love.